Okay, thanks everyone. I'd like to call the regular City Commission meeting of August 16th, 2022 to order and ask all of you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, Mayor Pro Tem Elder.
Present.
Commissioner Jenks.
Present.
Commissioner Rozelle.
Present.
Commissioner Olsman.
Present.
Mayor Paul present. Approval of the agenda. We have a motion.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Communications. We do have one communication that requires some action. That is to receive the resignation of Elizabeth Zerkwa from the Anti-Racism Advisory Committee and thank her for time served. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments?
We place this on the vacancy on the next meeting, Mr. Mayor, and we have an applicant who has an application on file, so we just push that to fill at the next meeting.
Absolutely, I can do that.
Very
Yes.
good. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do not see any elected officials out there anywhere. So we'll move on to public participation. This is an opportunity for the public to comment for an item that is not on the agenda.
Thank you. Commissioner Olsman, I checked Robert's rules, even Bob's rules, and there was nothing in there about an elected official not being able to answer a citizen's question. That said, since I have not heard anything, I assume that my earlier May request that the commission be transparent about its use of city vehicles is a no. I'm assuming then that you have rejected that request unless I hear otherwise. Is that reasonable? That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I do believe that at the last meeting, we did ask the city manager to start a log on who's using the vehicle.
No, I can address that in my manager's report if you wish.
Okay, thank you. Any other public participation? Seeing none, public participation is closed. And we'll move on to the regular items of business. We have an award presentation from the 4th of July, our civic awards. And Mayor Pro Tem Elder made that presentation on the 4th of July, so I'd like to have her do that again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the honor of presenting this award to Jim Spear at the 4th of July awards and ceremony presentation. And unfortunately, you weren't there in person, but I had the pleasure of meeting your partner. And today, I'm just going to read this, but before I do that, I wanted to also just reiterate the remarks that I shared with the public that day. You were so kind to me when I first started the commission, first appointed and learning about the ins and outs of the city and getting up to speed on what the senior advisory committee had been working on for so long. And I just humbly wanted to express my sincere appreciation for your patience with me, first of all, and secondly, just for your kindness during that ramp-up period. So thank you so much. So I'm going to share these remarks here. The winner of the Bob and Shard Newton Citizen of the Year Award for 2022 is Jim Spear. Jim is a former leader of Huntington Woods Boy Scout Troop number 1292. He served as a committee chair, merit badge counselor, and assistant scoutmaster. Jim recently completed his tenure on the Senior Advisory Committee, where he had served since the origination of the committee, helping to set the foundation for many of the great ideas the committee has put forth to enrich the lives of seniors in Huntington Woods. He most recently served as the committee chairperson and played a significant role in studying, fundraising, and making sure outdoor exercise equipment came to fruition, which was recently installed at Val Jones Park on 11 Mile. Jim has been a longtime active member of the Huntington Woods Men's Club, including serving as president and advisor. He has, for the last decade, been responsible for Men's Club's past president's scholarship fund that annually awards 3 to 4 scholarships to high school seniors based on their volunteer activities for the community. Jim is the founder and president of his nonprofit Senior and Caregiver Resource Network, which helps to provide seniors and their families as they try to navigate the various assistance programs. Jim is a recognized leader throughout the community and respected by everyone he works with. Jim is, well, this was irrelevant, actually, but the reason why you weren't there was because you were on a fishing trip with his father. So that was the last note in there. So I just wanted to replicate that recognition for that day. Thank you again for your many years of service and giving back to the community. You are greatly appreciated. Sure.
Congratulations again.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for going through that twice.
My pleasure.
If you'd like to say anything, you're more than welcome.
I think the only thing I want to say is, you know, first and foremost, I feel honored by this selection, especially when I know that there's so many people in our community that do so many great things and also should be recognized as well for those types of things. So I do feel honored by that. And Huntington Woods has been our home for 30 years actually this year, and it's where we wanted to start our family. This is where we wanted to build our community and develop great friendships. Like my buddy Dave Houston, who put my name in the hat, and that's why I ended up getting this, so thanks Dave. Appreciate it. That being said, participating and giving to the city has always been something that's been, to me, fairly easy to do, because I want to be a contributing member, and it helps build, you know, community morale. And hopefully, as a result of that, the new people that come into Huntington Woods and move here and build their families will experience the same thing and be able to give back as well. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up is a matter of considering approval of the 2022 master plan update. I think I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to sit on the side there.
Okay. Thank you,
Not
Mr.
blocking
Mayor.
you.
At this point, we've gone through about 18 months' worth of hard work with the Planning Commission, our consultants MKSK, and a list of people that I would like to recognize at the end of the presentation. At this point, I would like to introduce to you Brad Strader from MKSK and Anne Marie Kirby, also from MKSK, who's going to give our presentation. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to put the lights down a little bit here in the front. So, oh, perfect. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Hank, for the introduction. I'm Anne Marie Kirby, planner with MKSK and project manager for the master plan update. I do want to thank Planning Commission and City Commission for all of your hard work on this effort so far. We do have a brief presentation tonight to go through, I guess I have to point that way, to go through the planning process and really give a refresher about what a master plan is and the importance of a master plan, and really highlight the recommendations in the plan. So we'll do that. We'll give an engagement recap, and I'll also cover the action plan and then go over the support that we receive from agencies and communities. So although we're kind of coming to a close to this process, I think it's really important to point back to what a master plan is. It's a comprehensive document that anticipates long-range trends and provides guidance on a variety of topics, including land use, zoning, transportation, and sustainability. It highlights the community's existing assets, and it really makes you unique and special. And then we have a planning process that was set up to really have people reflect on that and identify what their priorities were, what really should be preserved and enhanced in the community. And then also through that, we were able to reveal what other investment opportunities there might be in the city, like infill development potential and non-motorized improvements and sustainable best practices. And then the action plan is the clearly defined roadmap to implementation. So that I'll talk about that in a little bit. So we've gone through this extensive process that included technical analysis, ensuring that the plan meets the requirements of the Michigan Planning Act, incorporating input from residents and stakeholders, and then aligning with the MEDC, Economic Development Corporation's requirements, and then revising the plan in consideration of Planning Commission, City Commission, and residents' input. So the master plan update included changes to the master plan, the original one, that were based on activities where the public could give input. And Planning Commission did adopt the master plan update at their last meeting in July. And so now we're at the end of this process. This is to show you, as Hank indicated, it's about an 18-month-long process. So a lot of work went into it, and we're finally at the finish line. So it's pretty exciting. And just to give you a summary of that process, throughout this planning process, we engaged with stakeholders in the community in many different ways. We had virtual and in-person working sessions with Planning Commission, I think about 5 total, and the public was welcome to come to those meetings and give input. We had a visioning open house last summer at the rec center. We had over 100 people attend that meeting. We had a community-wide survey and website updates. We had over 550 people take that survey. And so all of those helped craft priorities and recommendations that you see in the plan. And then later on in the process, it was reviewed by adjacent communities and agencies. And then we recently had the public hearing with Planning Commission in July. So those top priority improvements that were identified throughout the process included stormwater management in the city, road maintenance and construction, increasing sustainability, enhancing parks and recreation opportunities in the city, diversifying housing, especially for seniors, and then also looking at crosswalk and street improvements. And this just shows how the plan is organized. So it's a series of different recommendation chapters. So I'm going to walk you through and just briefly give an overview of each one of those. So one of the most important tools in the plan is the future land use map. This is really going to be a guiding tool for you to use for zoning, land use, and development decisions that you make in the city. And one of the biggest takeaways here is, preserving the existing residential land that's in the city, and then focusing on investment opportunities that have redevelopment potential along key corridors like Woodward and Coolidge. And that could also include expanding residential diversity in the city by including mixed-use development opportunities. And then one of the priorities that we heard back about was increasing sustainability in the city. So we had a recommendation there to create a climate action plan to establish benchmarks and track best practices. And we recommend that this would include energy efficiency and alternative energy methods, different types of mobility options, stormwater management best practices, and we actually have some of those in the master plan, waste reduction and management, and then ways to enhance quality of life in the city for residents. So we further explored sustainability by addressing management of stormwater runoff. Again, that was a top priority that we heard back about from residents. And this section in the plan discusses best practices related to green infrastructure and different techniques that can be used to help mitigate and capture stormwater runoff. And I want to show a summary here of the diversity, equity, inclusion plan that was included in the master plan. This was actually a separate study plan that was done from the master plan update process, separate consultants, but we did incorporate their study and their findings and summarize that in the plan. This was done to really help evaluate and really meet the expectations of the city, attracting people of all ages, races, and ethnicities and backgrounds. And they engaged the city commission. They had a survey around the same time that we had a survey, and then they held focus groups with residents. And some of their findings indicated that more resources need to be dedicated for services for seniors. It also emulated that there's a lack of diversified housing in the city, and there could be more options available if there's mixed uses allowed and creating public-private partnerships. We also looked at the transportation network in Huntington Woods, and we took a look at especially where we could enhance mobility and walkability in the city. So this map shows the recommended improvements to the city corridors, and some of the key ones include enhancing pedestrian crossings along 696 and at 11 Mile and Woodward. And then new pedestrian crossings are proposed along 11 Mile. This would really help provide safer connections to the school. And then we're also recommending that a study be completed for pedestrian crossings along 11 Mile Road to identify and confirm those crossings, where they're located, and also look at the light timing for pedestrians to make sure that's sufficient. And then also take a look at lane reconfiguration study. Right now it's a 4-lane road, and looking to potentially narrow it down to a 3-lane road to help make it easier for pedestrians to cross the road, but also to potentially implement green infrastructure practices along 11 Mile. So as part of the economic development section of the plan, we focused on Woodward Avenue and Coolidge Avenue and Coolidge Road, and we looked at potential investment opportunities along each of those. So as you know, Woodward Avenue is pretty unfriendly for pedestrians. There's really a lack of streetscaping, and the service drive is in really poor condition. So we took a look at and created a series of diagrams. This is just showing phase 3, but we wanted to really show how investment opportunities could really change the way that Woodward looks along Huntington Woods, recognizing that the red lane that you see there is the smart bus BRT lane, which is the bus rapid transit lane that SMART would like to implement in the future. So that could really help spur these development opportunities. But we show, things like shared parking, adding a couple stories to some of the 1-story buildings here, and really enhancing the streetscaping to make it an overall better experience for the residents of Huntington Woods. And then we also looked at Coolidge. This area, it's a little bit better. The sidewalk is newer, but there's still a lot of parking lot here, and the parking lots aren't shared. So there's opportunity here. Obviously, the city does not own any of this property, but these are all, conceptual in nature to really provide you with visuals that you can use when you're talking to property owners, investors, to really try to get something else going here, especially when you're talking about increasing residential diversity in the city, because those opportunities we've highlighted are, potential along Woodward and Coolidge. As you can see, we're showing townhomes along here, but again, this is just conceptual and just an idea, but we again have shared parking and enhanced streetscaping, and just showing how both of these corridors can be enhanced. And then for the zoning plan, for the most part, there weren't really any significant number of recommended changes to this section. The zoning ordinance actually already has integrated a lot of things that we'd recommend in our best practices, like allowing for mixed uses along commercial corridors and having design guidelines in place. But we do have a recommendation to rezone the property at the corner of 11 Mile and Woodward to the transitional district to be consistent with the rest of the Woodward corridor. And then we have some actions from the previous preservation plan that was in the original master plan and some additional sustainable standards that we've recommended. And on June 7th, the Oakland County Coordinating Zoning Committee supported the master plan. We did add their suggested language to the plan related to hazard mitigation planning, and then we documented the county housing resources, really just to point back that, you know, Oakland County has these resources available and that Huntington Woods should continue to partner with them to, you know, enhance the city and implement some of the actions in the plan. And then Pleasant Ridge and Berkeley both sent letters of support for the master plan update. And I just want to show, this is an example of what the action plan looks like in the master plan update. This really is going to provide your framework for implementation. We have the actions and partners, priorities, and timeframes identified here. And it's really kind of your checklist as you're going through, as you're implementing the plan. We do recommend that Planning Commission revisit this on an annual basis to confirm and update the priorities as needed. And then for next steps, you can do a couple things. You can update adopt the master plan update, or you could postpone action if there's significant changes that you think need to be addressed and send it back to Planning Commission. And I'm here to answer any questions. I also do want to point out too, we had a memo that we sent out, I believe Hank provided that, so we can talk about that. But I think as part of your motion, if you decide to update the master plan, or I'm sorry, adopt the master plan update tonight, you can, you know, just incorporate those revisions as part of your motion in there. Okay, happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve the 2022 master plan update?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any public comment?
Just a question. Given all the road work that's being done in the city now, does any of that road work include any of the recommendations on dealing with stormwater runoff, as is indicated in the master plan? That may be it.
Hank, you want to address that?
Yeah, I can give you some information on that. If you take a look and you see what kind of curbs are being installed on the roads, we're seeing a lot of rolled curbs instead of the box curbs.
Yep.
A lot of that's getting so that water can run off and run into the system. It also allows for water that would be normally overflowed to get back onto the green space without a barrier, so that some of that could be addressed. As far as the grades and the grades of the roads, there's not much that we can do with that. The other thing that we do try to do, however, though, is to make sure that when we can, that the roads are cut in such a fashion that it has the least amount of impact on existing trees, and we only remove trees as an ultimate necessity for the plan, because those trees will drink a substantial amount of water during a rain event. So it's important to us to do that. But Public Works is the department that normally addresses the roads. But yes, that's why we do talk about the roads.
So stormwater curb extensions, pervious pavement, stormwater pre-settling zones, any of that going on?
Well, that's kind of what we're looking at towards the 11-mile study that we're hoping to get done with that. So that would be the biggest area of need with that.
And that's part of the current
That's part of
construction
the
plan?
plan that's in here.
Not the master plan, but what you're actually doing with the road construction this year?
I'd have to defer that to our Public Works Department.
Okay, so at this point, it doesn't appear that you're doing any of that with the current construction cycle?
I'd have to defer that to the
Okay,
Public Works
fair
Department.
enough. I look forward to your answer.
Any other comments? Any comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I want to first of all thank Hank We have a member of the Planning Commission sitting in the audience today, and I want to thank you to the Planning Commission. I did have just a few technical questions more about the plan, which was what, I forgot your name. Anne-Marie, that she mentioned in the memo, and that was to be very transparent. I just had a question about being consistent with the housing comments from the DEI section and the housing types section, and then just calling out EV infrastructure because the first copy of the plan that we received, it was missing that page, so I didn't realize it was already in there. So those were just the technical questions and comments, and so that's what was in the memo. So thank you for addressing that. And I'd be comfortable with moving forward as long as those were integrated.
Commissioner Jackson?
Yeah, I was pleased to see the Woodward Corridor Phase 3 infill. I don't know where it's appropriate, but in the BRT, they really do not stop. They do on 461, 462, stop at Lincoln, but on the other route, they don't. So the only stop is at 11 Mile. I would hope if there is some way that there can be encouragement, even though that would be a Royal Oak stop, that on the Real Express, that they also make 2 stops for a community of 6,600 people. The diversity, equity, and inclusion is important for the city, and yet the pictures don't portray it. In many instances from the original summer planning meeting, we've got virtually 3 of the same identical pictures. I don't know if there's other pictures that would show minorities present. There's a lot of duplication in pictures. I hope in the final product that can be modified. And then the 11 Mile Road moving from 4 lanes to 3 lanes is critical. It's come up and come up and come up, and everyone wants an expressway, it seems, on 11 Mile Road, except for the people that live there and except for reasonable planning standards, which say you don't need to do it. And we've got I-696 at our south end, which accommodates people. So I was pleased with that. I noticed that Berkeley also commented. So if we do it, we've got 2 sides of the road that agree, which is such a ridiculous kind of concept agreement. But I mean, other than that, those were my comments. I thought it was a lot more progressive. The Woodward Corridor really needs to be cleaned up. We've talked about it for 20 plus years. There is virtually no change. And you know that you've at least presented it. It just doesn't get action.
I think there is some movement with the RTA and SMART on Woodward, and on behalf of the city, we've engaged in conversations with Royal Oak,
Yes.
and Birmingham, and Berkeley, and the RTA, and Ferndale. So I think the communities are working with MDOT now. MDOT's attitude is maybe a little different than in the past, so I think that there's movement going forward, and I think the master plan takes it to where we are today, but I think we've laid a lot of groundwork to continue.
But including phase 3, I mean, everybody else is doing it, MDOT's paying for it. So this whole anxiety of where do we get the money, especially during the next 2 years with a lot of the infrastructure money that's out there. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'd also like to express my thanks to the Planning Commission. Chris, you can take that back to them. Over the course of the 18 months, they put a tremendous amount of hours into this, and with Hank's leadership, they've done a great job. So thanks for all your effort. Do we have a motion on the floor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor, can I just make a comment on that for a real quick second here? I just want to point out that there's a lot of people that put time in there, and I thought that we would be remiss if we didn't recognize them by name. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to thank Michael Wright, who's our chairperson for the Planning Commission, Rick Poland, who's our vice chair, who was filled in on occasion admirably, Jill Ingber, Chris Golombieski, who is here this evening. Thank you, Chris. Sheldon Cohn, Blake Moore, Gail Linden, Todd Spurl. I'd also like to thank two of the commissioners who served through the Planning Commission's in the incarnation of the plans. The first being Commissioner Jules Olsman, who was our 2021 liaison, who put in countless hours and meetings trying to get this right. Jules, we really appreciate it. And of course, our Mayor Bob Paul, who was our 2021 liaison, or 2022 liaison. Thank you again, Mayor Paul. Brad Strader for his work, and Anne Marie Kirby for her work. Also Elizabeth King from MEDC, who has been a great resource for me on this. I'd also like to thank Commissioner Elder for our conversations and going around trying to make this a really good product. Thank you. And Commissioner Jenks and Roselle for their comments and support throughout this process. I'd also like to thank Chris Wilson, who's been nothing but supportive for this entire process. And thank you, Chris, for your support. So having said that, I thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 3. Matter of considering approval of the appointment of Ethan Hahn to the ICCA board. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments from the public?
Mayor Paul? I think Ethan was just gonna take a second to, in case the commissioner wasn't aware, to talk about the ICCA board, what they do, and why he's replacing Tim.
That would be great.
on the board.
Right, so the ICCA is short for the Intergovernmental Cable Communications Authority. It's tradition, Tony Lehman served as our liaison for Huntington Woods, then Tim Rowland did, and then in conversations with, there's still the opening for treasurer, and that is a role that Tim filled, and in conversations with the president of the ICCA, Cindy Stewart from Troy, and Manager Wilson, it was thought best that that tradition continue. So the finance director at Huntington Woods filling the critical role of treasurer for the ICCA, and that's what came to tonight.
Can you try and get some control back for the obscenities and the way they put stuff on our poles? with no
Oh, you mean
permission?
like the
All the repeaters and
Right,
stuff
okay.
like that.
I mean, that's something I can bring. The next meeting is Thursday at 2:30, so that's something
Yeah,
I can do.
what we've got is, they flipped a gentleman's agreement between the public and commercial, and by getting the legislature to write something entirely different that had been negotiated for a couple of years. But it's time that that occurs again.
Okay. Yeah, I will bring that up at the meeting on Thursday. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for your service, Ethan.
Thank you.
Next item of business is a matter of receiving and file the Insurance Service Office report on public protection classification rating. Chris, do you want to?
Thank you. I had written a memo for this. I see it's not in my packet. Did any of you get my memo in your packet? If not, that's a shame, because it was obviously, it was exhilarating, as all my memos are. But I will wing it.
No memo.
So I wanted to put this on here, one, because it's good news. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the ISO rating, if you talked about it before. It's called the PPC, or the Public Protection Classification Rating, but everybody refers to it as your ISO rating. There's a nationwide ranking of fire departments and/or public safety departments for fire safety ratings. The scale is on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the best, 10 being the lowest rating. And roughly every 3 years, the ISO comes through and does an analysis of your department on a lot of things. And it's not just your fire department, some of it's also your water system that you have, your hydrants, what condition they're in, what kind of pressure you maintain throughout your system. The last analysis we had, Huntington Woods and another public safety agency in the area, which I won't mention by name, but they both achieved the rating of 3 for a public safety rating for fire protection, which was almost unheard of previously. You had to be a full-time professional fire department to maintain a level of 3, so that was a little bit groundbreaking that a couple of communities in this area did that. Huntington Woods, in their recent evaluation, maintained their level of 3. While that's important, and also it relates to the community, not only that we have a very good ability to fight fires and a great fire safety measure, it makes an impact in your pocketbook because that's what homeowners insurance agencies use to rate premiums in the community. So having a 3 instead of a 4 or 5 means money back into all of our residents' pockets. Well, not just reflective of some of the best practices that we use. So thanks to Chief Pazakowski, Deputy Director Cudney for their work on this, the entire department, Rocco and his agency, and also Zerkwa and their work in maintaining a reliable water system here. It's a good rating. This rating will go into effect, I believe, this November, will remain in effect for roughly 3 years. But I thought it was important just to bring this to the Commission's attention. You've probably gone over it in the past, but that's a difficult level to achieve and to maintain. Speaks volumes, I think, of what the city's doing as a whole, but particularly the public safety department. So I just wanted to get it before you. We can just, I think you had a motion to receive and file, and just try to answer any questions you may have about the rating and the rating system.
Mr. Mayor, I think that was an excellent explanation, and I'm not aware that any community possesses a 1. I don't know that anyone has ever achieved that. It's very hard.
Nobody in Michigan that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and so for us to get a 3 when communities that have, multiple fire stations, full-time independent departments, all types of equipment, they're at a 5. And our community's at a 3. I mean, the motto, we haven't lost a basement yet, doesn't apply in our city because our folks get out there and are able to minimize damage. And that's one of the things I think that's a factor too, is when you have a fire, what's the ultimate cost to the insurance carrier for, that fire? And because our response is so quick and fire damage is minimal, that's a good thing. So thank you for bringing
I think they've done a quick analysis, and this included all agencies across the country. And with a rating of 3, you're in the top, I think it was 13 or 14% across the country, which includes places like New York City, Chicago, San Francisco that have, full-time, multiple station staff. So it's rare ground that we're treading there with a public safety agency to maintain that. You are correct.
Did I get a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Second. I didn't write it down.
I thought you did. I might have made that up.
Any public comment? All right, any other comments from the commission? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5 is just an update on the petition that was recently circulated in the community regarding recreational marijuana.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. On this one, I think my memo is there. I hope you have that. So I won't belabor this, but it was an important issue that we've addressed since the last time we met. I just wanted to give an official update to the commission and to the public. It was July 25th, we received petitions that had roughly 380 signatures on them for us to evaluate. The petition language that was drafted was intended to repeal Section 42.4 of the Huntington Woods Code of Ordinances, which establishes a current prohibition on recreational marijuana facilities within the city limits. So we got the petitions, started some of the process of evaluating the signatures, but pretty soon on we recognized what we thought were some problems with the petition language as it was drafted. The language was drafted referring to Section 6 of the Michigan Recreational Marijuana Taxation Act. I think, did I get that right? MRTMA. And under Section 6, there is a provision by which somebody can petition for an ordinance to establish the number of recreational marijuana facilities in a community. The language that was submitted under the petition really went above and beyond that, and I've included a copy of the language in there for your review. But it had some pretty broad regulatory clauses in there about how potential licensees would be qualified, or they could put those, what authority the city had or did not have to regulate that. We felt it was a significant overreach from what the legislature had authorized in Section 6. And beyond that, and kind of talking with some of our fellow communities, we found this same language had been submitted in multiple communities, including that we were aware of: Kegel Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and Farmington Hills. And it was the same petitioners, the same language. Kegel Harbor had this language before them first. Their clerk and their staff and their legal counsel had reviewed it, come to the same conclusions that we had, and had denied the language based upon what they said was an overreach of the petition pursuant to Section 6. So separate from our analysis of it, we come to find out after the fact that other communities had reviewed it, come to the same conclusion that we had. And there was a pending court case before Judge McMillan in Circuit Court, which the petitioner had a right to appeal. They had appealed Kegel Harbor's denial and had asked the judge for a writ of mandamus to place this matter on the ballot, overruling the clerk's denial of the petition. So that hearing was coming up soon. We waited to see what the judge's ruling was, and Judge McMillan's ruling in that case was that the city clerk had rightfully denied the petition based upon the language not being compliant with Section 6 of the Act. So when we had that ruling in hand, we also we had communication with the petitioner denying them of that their place on the ballot for November. Then I get these to you. There's a more recent update for that, even as well as just as of yesterday, the petitioner had submitted for a request for an emergency hearing, an expedited review before the Circuit Court of Appeals, before the State Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals are granted their request for a hearing and agreed to expedite it, but then denied their request. So that really, I think, closes the door on this matter for this election cycle. As I'm told, today was the deadline for the county to have all ballot language ready for the ballot. So I think the matter has been thoroughly vetted. I think our conclusion that staff, along with Carol Rosati, came to has been proven to be valid. I don't know if this matter will come up again. We've had a lot of communication about this. There's been some discussion about maybe the city looking at 42.4 again, deciding if we want to modify it in some way or not, or maybe give the voters a choice on that. I would set and take the commission's direction on that, however you want to go. But I thought this was important because almost 400 residents signed it. I think more than that saw it. I fielded a couple of calls since then wanting to know what the status of this was. I think there was some confusion about what the petition was actually about. I don't know that the petition circulators were real clear as to what was in that.
They were not real clear.
I was being kind. But I didn't want it to. I wanted there to be official record of what had happened here. And frankly, it took a lot of time. It was a lot of effort on administration staff to review this. I know more about the act now than I probably cared to. Carol Rosati and her staff were very helpful in guiding us through this. And it was Hank was involved. Heidi, in the midst of managing another election, had this dropped in her lap too. So it was a significant effort on the part of our staff, and also I think good collaboration with other communities, which always works well. So if I butchered anything on the legal or court side of it, I'm sitting between an elections expert, an attorney, and another attorney. So I try to tread lightly on those, but feel free, Matthew, to clarify anything I might have misspoke on.
Your summary is absolutely excellent.
Okay, thank you.
The status of it. And, the key was that they really did just overreach. The statute only authorizes a petition to set the number of establishments, and the argument was that by denying it, the city was evaluating the substance of the rest of the language. But the court came up with the idea that there's really two questions here. There's substantive review, which would have to wait for after the election, but then there's a threshold procedural review, which is what the city here, in Kegel Harbor's case, was considered to have done, which is the same thing here, which was just making sure that regardless of the content of that extra substance, whether that extra substance was even allowed, and that's what wasn't. And so it looks like we were on solid ground there. Hopefully the law is starting to get a little clearer on this area with each iteration of these cases.
Mr. Mayor? Just wanted to make a couple comments. As our city manager alluded to, I did have a petition circulator knock on my door and asked if I wanted to sign the petition. I said, what's it about? He said, it's to legalize marijuana. And I said, well, it's already legal. And I said, what's the petition really about? He said, well, unlimited dispensaries in the community. I think it'd be great. And I said, oh, do you live here? He said, no. I said, oh, interesting. Okay. So completely misrepresented, initially what it was. Further dialogue, I was able to get out of the petition circulator that it was for these unlimited dispensaries. And regardless of how you feel about marijuana itself, it's whether or not you want it sold in our community, and the fact that the majority of our retail establishments abut city parks or schools, probably not the most ideal place to sell it. And we have Berkeley, Royal Oak, Pleasant Ridge, Hazel Park, Madison Heights, Ferndale, all these communities around us where it is absolutely readily available that, I don't think our residents have any trouble traveling outside of the community to nearby. If Berkeley gets its way, it's going to stick one right across 11 Mile Road, right across from one of our parks and schools there. So it'll be very close. I just, regardless how you feel about it itself, I just feel like this wasn't really the best fit for these unlimited dispensaries in a community of our size, designed and laid out the way it is. So, will it come back? Maybe. But the residents at home, I would encourage them to be very careful what they sign and make sure that they're not falling prey to a petition circulator misrepresenting what they're actually signing. Thank you.
Yeah, I also got someone at my door, and even if someone wants access to a dispensary, there is one that will be 2 blocks from here, and everyone in the city will be within 1 mile of every resident in the city. There is a second dispensary going up further on 11 Mile Road, which will give everyone in the city a second dispensary within 2 miles. The dispensary itself that's going in on 11 Mile Road is within a block of one of our city parks, is within a block and a half of a children's school at the Lutheran Church, and is within about 2 blocks of one of Men's Club Field, and it's also within the limit of one of the elementary schools in Berkeley. The dispensary itself took no consideration of the fact that children were nearby. So from the point of view of having access, the access is there. From the point of view of what was presented, it was way above where virtually any kind of petition that you get is given to you. I mean, we did not have the normal advance requirement to get it seemed on the ballot, and it was a simple number compared to many other kinds of programs. So I'm very, very pleased with the way this turned out, and I'm very pleased the way the manager handled it and gave us advice.
I'm going to back up a little bit and ask for public participation on this issue, just to give the public an opportunity. Okay. Seeing none, any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, I also want to compliment our city manager on his handling of the petition issue, and also I believe it was Attorney Tom Ryan from Keego Harbor, who is a longtime friend of mine who represented the city, and it was the cause of some angst because of the risk that our city could be pulled into litigation with these people, and but Chris was right. He thought that we should sit back and wait and see what Judge McMillan did, and she took care of it. It's the same ordinance, it's the same ballot language as here, so it obviously applies, and obviously the Court of Appeals didn't think it was an emergency matter. So, but in somewhat of a different analysis, I think our city is better off considering our own ordinance to allow a dispensary where we would be able to specify, you know, the number, which probably would be one, and where it could go. I think we owe that to our residents in terms of our obligation to control this type of business here. I mean, as both Joe and Jeff have pointed out, it is omnipresent, and it isn't a question of whether you can buy it in Oak Park and you can buy it everywhere else. The question is, what are we giving up? And I'd be the first one to say I don't know the answer to that. What are we giving up in terms of potential revenue by not having one? And I think that's something we need to consider too. We are talking about a legal substance now, and we're talking about something that's available everywhere. I mean, someone can, whether it's a block from a park or a mile from a park, if somebody wants to buy edibles, or since we don't allow smoking in public parks under our new policy, we're not talking about people smoking marijuana there. We're talking about whether somebody went and bought some edibles or whatever and then went to a public park. You can't tell people you can't do that. How are you going to do it? You're going to go open the foil on the candy bar to see what it is, and you're not going to be able to do that. So I think we're dealing with a new frontier here, and I think that we're best taking matters into our own hands. When we originally agreed not to allow dispensaries in the city when the marijuana ballot proposal first passed, I made clear at the time that was, in my opinion, a temporary measure because we wanted to see how it was all going to play out. Well, now we know how it's playing out, and there's one everywhere. So the question is our city losing by not having one? My guess it would be just anecdotally that the overwhelming number of residents in our city would not be against it. It's just a question of our being able to regulate it ourselves. So I think that we are well advised to consider our own ordinance, evaluate its impact, and obtain public input, because it would have to go through the planning commission, something else to dump on your plate now that you're done with the master plan. But I would like to see that process begin, just so we could get citizen input, resident input rather, and also consider the benefits of it as well as perceived disadvantages. And at this point, all of it's anecdotal because there are dispensaries everywhere. And I don't see a deterioration in any aspect of the neighborhoods where they're located, and probably improvement to some extent based on what they have to do to improve the buildings and the parking and so forth to do it. So I think I think we need to carefully evaluate it on our own terms. So I'm not moving to do anything tonight, but I do believe that our city should begin that process and see where it goes. I mean, let it go to the planning commission and see what people think and what their ideas are, and get a better sense at that point, rather than just saying, well, I think this or I think that. And I'm not denigrating the opinions. I'm just saying they're anecdotal, and I'd like to see more data and more input, particularly by residents, to this topic. Thank you.
I think too, Mr. Mayor, I know Madison Heights recently did this, and I think their city government is in a tough spot trying to regulate and do all these various things. So I would like to also know the impact on the governmental unit itself, building departments, et cetera, and all of that, the requirements that are in this statute. So we've got to look at it holistically. I agree with Commissioner Olsman as much as possible.
Mr. Mayor, I think we had this discussion, was it a year or two ago as a commission, and one of the reasons why we postponed it and was because we wanted to see what the state law, how it's going to be implemented, how will these other communities that choose to be the first ones, you know, to allow these retailers to operate, how that's going to be, are there unintended consequences? So I fully agree with Commissioner Rosell that we should, if we are going to have this conversation, which I appreciate the comments by Commissioner Olsman here, it is here, but I would be very interested to know as a part of this discussion how the impact has been to other local communities, including all of the things that you just mentioned.
Okay, Commissioner Jenks.
Yeah. They do have a community benefits plan, and it would be useful to explore what the other communities have in the way of expenses and compare that against some of their community benefits, and be able to let residents know what the, really what the costs are. There's enough experience, I think, out there now where communities are starting to see costs and benefits.
And I'm sorry, one more thing. The other thing I was thinking about is also the state law and what needs to be addressed there. In the example of the dispensary that's going on 11 Mile across the street from us, there is a school across the street from them. And the state act right now only pertains to public schools. So, you know, you have this question out there, should it apply to private schools or, you know, other lower schools, not just K through 12, what about pre-K? Those are all questions, and I'm glad that we waited because now we're seeing what's actually happening on the ground. And we have to be very deliberate and thoughtful about this.
And that other school's been there for over 40 years.
Okay. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the update. Item number 6 is a request from Hank Berry to fill an open position on the Zoning Board of Appeals. It is important when a resident comes to the ZBA that they have the opportunity to have a full board present to make a judgment on their case. This open seat would be an alternate that we're filling at this time, and it is for the balance of the term, which is...
That'll run through next year, I believe, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
And this person is, already has experience having been on the ZBA and would be, you know, with all due respect, a plug and play. And then as people fall off during the natural cycle, we'll also need more people, but this person's ready to serve and is available now. We do have applications in for others later on.
Mr. Mayor, I would support the appointment of Joseph Claya to the ZBA for the reasons that Mr. Berry articulated. He's a well-known quantity with tremendous experience and background. He's perfect for the ZBA. And I agree with Hank that when people come in there, there is, you know, they're usually seeking a variance, and they're entitled to a knowledgeable review of what they want and an intelligent decision as to what should happen. And I personally, having been on the ZBA and personally having participated in it for many years and having watched it, I think it's a terrific group of residents that's on there, all knowledgeable, experienced folks, and I think he'd be a great addition. I support his appointment.
Second.
Any public comment? None. Any comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I'd be remiss, this is my neighbor who lives a few doors down on my street, so I would agree with everything that my colleague Commissioner Olsman said.
Naturally.
Right, exactly. I know he's an excellent choice and a good fit for this board, very conscientious, and that's what you need on the ZBA, is a good balance. And I think he brings a great balance. And so I'm very pleased that you've brought his name forward and that we can confirm him tonight.
Coming from another person who has served on it.
I have, yes, that's where I got my start, right? It's the minor leagues, city commission, right?
Not hardly, Commissioner.
Even I served on the ZBA.
Yes, yes.
Right.
That's about 21 years ago or so, for a couple of years, so. So, any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you. Clerk Heidi could not be here with us this evening, but I did want to pass along a couple of tidbits regarding the August primary, which I think all in all went very well. Huntington Woods led Oakland County in voter turnout for this election, which is not the first time that's happened. But just over 50%. There was a brief write-up, I think, in the Oakland Press of our voter turnout around the county, and we led the county in that. So amongst other good things we do here, we vote and we recycle a lot, in large quantities in both. There were some issues that we did work through, and I think probably the one that Heidi and I talked about the most, I said I would mention tonight, was issues with people taking absentee ballots and either not voting them and showing up at the polls, or coming to the polls and turning in their absentee ballot on site. That did cause some delays. If they had taken an absentee ballot, which they didn't use, and showed up at the polls to vote, which they can do, but it required the poll workers then to call back here. We had to spoil that ballot. I think we had an employee who that day just pretty much stayed glued to the phone, because we had, it was around 90 or so, I think, total that had to be spoiled that day. Some of the feedback we got from residents were, yeah, I got the absentee ballot so that I would know what I was voting on before I came here, but I'll plan on showing the polls and voting anyway. I'm sympathetic to that, because I've been at the polls, as probably all of you have, and you get a race and you're like, oh God, who's this again? You know, and it's going to be, that situation is going to be worse in November. The state does make some resources available. There is a website which you can go to and put in your address, take a look at your ballot ahead of time. I've just cheated and just made a cheat sheet before I went into the polls too. I think the point would be, and I think the state's going to probably have to do some work on this as well, but if you take an absentee ballot, then vote it before the election day. Deciding not to vote it, things happen, I understand, but if you have no intent of doing that, it does cause problems when you show up at the polls, because now we've got to back workers out at the polling place to call here, and we have to have somebody on staff. We will staff that fully with somebody in November just to prepare for that. But we were by far not alone in that, in municipalities that struggled with that issue, I think, this time. The state has advocated for absentee ballot access, and I think that's good. But the point is, you take the absentee ballot because you're going to have difficulty getting to the polls that day, or you're not going to be here. If your intent is just to go to the polls that day and vote, there are other ways you can determine what's going to be on the ballot. And doesn't cause multiple ballots to be floating around out there in your name. We had no issues with ballots, the tabulators not corresponding to the votes cast. That all worked out well. It was just that particular issue caused delays of people having to wait at the polls, because now we've got to call back and spoil their ballot before we can let them proceed. And again, given the job of my distinguished gentleman from Kingston to my right, I do tread lightly on that. If you have anything else you wanted to add to that, or any insights you have on that. But yeah, I know other communities struggle with that issue as well, so we'll try to do a little bit better with voter education between now and then. Again, it's everybody's favorite season in Michigan, construction. We're not immune to that here. I think everybody's well aware of the projects we have going on. There's been a lot of work with that, with the LaSalle water main project. We did have a significant number of water main breaks as we got to installing that new line and abandoning that line. I think we had a total of 8 before we completely abandoned that line, which is indicative of the condition of the line and why we were replacing it. So once we got the ground exposed, that line, as we anticipated, did have some weaknesses in it, and we had multiple failures, but we never lost pressure to the point to where we had to do a boil water notice, so that was good. We have had some scheduled shutoffs while we reestablished contact to that new line. We'll have another one for just, I think, 4 homes tomorrow on 11 Mile. All in all, I think we've had good cooperation, considering what an interruption that is to the residents, and we appreciate that. A lot of the Nadine paving is done. We're coming close to being finished with the Boardman's side of it as well. So when sometimes you ask, geez, we're only doing this much construction this year, why aren't you doing more? Well, there's a finite capacity to what the city can absorb, and that's more art than science, but you're working through that now. You can only do so much and still function at a normal level. In a couple of days, we were probably pushing that envelope, but we have good cooperation from our residents, and we appreciate that. So I always swear every road project's the last one I ever do, and then it's done, and you're all happy with it, and we'll schedule another one next year. All in all things considered, I think it's going well. Thanks to Rocco, to Amy, who fields most of the questions, Jane and the front staff here who handles a lot of that. So I think all that's going as well as these things go, as we will say. So thanks to Tom Ryan, as you mentioned, he was the legal counsel on that case, and it would be remiss not to mention him. Also finally learned this week of a passing of a longtime city manager, the state of Michigan, Jack Schumacher, who was a mentor of mine in Marysville. He's, to get the credit and or blame, probably for my first city manager job ever. So it's sad to see of Jack's passing. And one final note on a more positive note, former city manager, interim city manager, Mark Wollenweber will be receiving an award for distinguished service from the ICMA this fall in Columbus for his approximately 317 years of service in local government in the state of Michigan. So congratulations to Mark on that award. He will be receiving that at the ICMA annual convention in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just had a question for the city manager. In case you hadn't read the well-written Commissioner's Corner in the current issue of the Hometown Herald, when might we be seeing the historic plaque at Rackham?
Well, Hank, we ordered that. Do you have an update on that?
I do. We're looking at this fall, late fall, because those things are cast aluminum and they take like a long time to produce. And my suggestion with that will be is if we get too late in the season and can't have a meaningful dedication, that we actually have it delivered, stored, and do it in the spring when we can have more people be more available to enjoy that. I do have still some contact information for Ben Davis's family. We're in contact with Karen Peak all the time, and also the Rackham crew, so we'll make sure that we get the best spot possible for that. And at that point in time, we'd like to have a meaningful publication of what it is we're doing and where we're doing it, and see if we can get the crowd out for that. It's a very, very good thing, and it's been well waited on until we were funded, so we are very appreciative of that, but we anticipate late fall or early
Where
spring.
exactly do you envision it being positioned?
By the clubhouse on the island.
Okay.
So it would be available to everybody that would drive around that, and also everybody that would park would have to walk past it to get to the clubhouse.
Well, I'm hopeful we can get it done this year, if possible. That would
Yeah,
be-
I mean, if it shows up, we won't hesitate to mobilize and get it up. But the thing is that we want to know that it's here. We have to inspect it. First place, it has to get here. Our DPW knows that it's going to be delivered there, and Rocco has already said that he'd be installing it on behalf of the city in conjunction with Rackham as far as where their placement is. But we have already talked to Karen Peak about it, and we've also talked to Angie Hips, who's one of the representatives from the city of Detroit that handles Rackham. So as soon as we get it here and we have it in hand, if it makes sense, we'll definitely be doing it.
If you don't do it this year, why not consider Juneteenth?
Well, it's a long time.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is if it's not done.
Well,
I
I
think-
know, but it's its own celebration, and I just think whenever it comes in, we do it. And, if it's during the school year, it offers,
Oh, yeah.
Beth Crable and the teachers there to, it's a talking, and it's
It can be a learning experience.
it's a learning experience, and it's a historic plaque. So I really don't think we need, like I said, I'm hopeful we can do it this year. one more thing.
Sure.
I guess, I don't know who it should rest to Bob or to you, but I think we should invite our newly elected, you don't know if she's elected yet, but Haley Stevens, maybe we should wait till after the general election before we invite her to an upcoming city commission meeting and give her a good grilling in honor of her pending election.
Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, Mr. Stack left before the end of the meeting.
Oh,
Yeah, and
forgot that.
so,
Yeah.
that's all right. But what I was gonna ask you to do is if you could reach out to him and just let him know that, it's all, all public information. Everything we have here in City Hall is public record. Any resident can request it. And so he's totally free to file a Freedom of Information request, and I would encourage city turn over all the documents. We have a log now. I don't know that any of us use the vehicle. Maybe I've never used it, but if there is a log or such records exist, turn them over and just let them know. File a FOIA request, and it's yours. It doesn't require action by this board to release public documents. They're public, and so rather than have him come to the next meeting and then leave and miss the opportunity to hear what we're saying, if you could please reach out to him, I would greatly appreciate it.
I did do that, and I did have the log, and I will forward it to Dr. Stack by the end of the week.
Include with that the original motion to pass the policy in 2019, which did involve discussion at that time. And I agree with Joe. I don't think we have to sit here and have somebody come in and suggest that because we're not discussing something that we're really not transparent. Everything we do is transparent, and all of this is transparent. All this is available for anybody who wants to see it. If anybody wants to see who drives the city, and I think he's only interested in city commissioners, all he has to do is ask, and that information is readily available to him or any other resident or any other person, period. So
I will put that together and get it to Dr. Stack.
Any other questions from the commission? The city manager? We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.